The question came so softly that Naya almost missed it. Almost. But when June Park spoke, the entire penthouse seemed to stop breathing. "Who touched you?" 5 words. Calm, surgical, and absolutely terrifying. Nia's hands froze on the marble countertop she'd been polishing for the last 10 minutes, her reflection staring back at her with wide, panicked eyes. The bandage on her cheekbone suddenly felt like it was burning through her skin. She'd been so careful. So incredibly careful. She arrived early, left late, kept her head down, never made eye contact longer than necessary. For 6 months, she'd been invisible in this world of expensive suits and dangerous whispers. And now, the most dangerous man in Blue Harbor District was staring directly at her, waiting for an answer she couldn't give. Her throat closed. The cleaning cloth trembled in her grip. Behind her, June stood perfectly still near the floor-to-ceiling windows, backlit by the city lights that made him look like something carved from shadow and steel. He wasn't yelling. He wasn't even moving. But the air itself felt heavier, like gravity had increased just from the weight of his attention. "It was nothing," Naya whispered, her voice barely escaping. "I fell. Clumsy." The lie tasted like ash. June didn't respond immediately. He simply watched her with those dark, calculating eyes that had sent grown men running. Then he took 1 step forward, just one, and Naya's entire body went rigid. "Try again," he said quietly. And somehow, that was worse than any threat he could have made. If you're already hooked, hit that subscribe button right now, because this story is about to take you on an emotional roller coaster you won't see coming. Trust me, you'll want to be here for what happens next. And drop a comment telling me if you'd accept help from someone this dangerous. Now let's rewind and show you exactly how we got here. 4:30 in the morning. That was when Nia's day started. Every single day, no exceptions. The alarm on her phone buzzed against the mattress she shared with her 7-year-old daughter, Lena, and Nia was already moving before her eyes fully opened. Muscle memory, survival instinct. She had exactly 12 minutes to shower, dress, and kiss her sleeping daughter's forehead before Mrs. Chen from next door arrived to watch Lena until school started. 12 minutes. Not 11. Not 13. 12. Because if she missed the first bus, she'd be late to the Riverside Apartments, and if she was late there, she'd be late to the office building downtown, and if she was late there, she wouldn't make it to Skyline Crest Penthouse by 9 a.m. sharp, and being late to June Park's home wasn't an option for someone like her. The penthouse was her 4th job of the day, but somehow it felt like the most important one. Maybe because the pay was 3 times what the others offered. Maybe because June Park, despite being exactly what the streets whispered he was, had never once made her feel small. He barely spoke to her at all, actually. Most days, he was already gone by the time she arrived, leaving behind only the faint scent of expensive cologne and the evidence of a life she couldn't begin to imagine. Whiskey glasses with a single sip missing. Business documents in languages she didn't understand. Sometimes, blood on a shirt cuff that she'd learned to soak in cold water before washing. She never asked questions. Questions got people hurt in Blue Harbor District. Everyone knew that June Park controlled everything from the waterfront to the business plaza. The restaurants, the shops, the protection, the silence. He was the king of a kingdom that didn't exist on any official map, and Nia was just the woman who made sure his castle stayed clean. Invisible, forgettable, safe. That's what she'd told herself for 6 months, until yesterday, when Derek found her. Derek Cole. The name still made her stomach turn even 3 years after she'd finally escaped him. Lena's biological father, and the reason Naya knew exactly what terror tasted like. He'd shown up outside her apartment building, smiling that same charming smile that had fooled her so completely when she was 19, and stupid, and thought love was supposed to hurt a little. "Been looking for you, Nia," he'd said, blocking her path like he had every right to. "Heard my daughter's growing up real pretty. Thought maybe I should be part of her life again." The conversation that followed wasn't really a conversation. It was Derek reminding her that he could take Lena away anytime he wanted, that he had rights, that courts loved fathers who wanted to step up, that maybe if Nia was a little more cooperative, a little more grateful, he'd consider not making things difficult. When she'd tried to walk past him, he'd grabbed her wrist hard enough to leave marks. When she'd pulled away, his ring had caught her cheekbone, splitting the skin just enough to bleed. Not enough to be dramatic, just enough to remind her that he could still reach her whenever he wanted. She'd covered it with makeup and a bandage and told herself it was fine. She'd survived worse. She'd survived this too. She just had to stay invisible a little longer. But when June Park asked his question, when those 5 words cut through every defense she'd built, Nia realized that invisible was no longer an option. "I know what a fall looks like," June said, moving to the kitchen island where Nia had been working. He moved like water, smooth and inevitable, until he was close enough that she could see the details the city lights had hidden. The perfect cut of his suit, the silver watch that probably cost more than her yearly rent, the scar along his jawline that suggested his own history with violence. "And I know what a fist looks like." He reached out slowly, telegraphing the movement like he was approaching something wild and scared. His fingers didn't touch her face. They hovered just beside the bandage, close, enough that she could feel the warmth of his hand. "This," he said softly, "is not a fall." Nia's heart was a war drum. Every instinct screamed at her to lie better, to run, to disappear before this man's attention burned her alive. But something else whispered underneath that fear. Something that noticed how carefully he wasn't touching her, how his voice had gentled, how he was waiting for permission that he absolutely didn't need to take. "It's complicated," she managed. June's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. "Uncomplicated." It wasn't a request. "My ex-boyfriend," Nia heard herself say, the words falling out before she could stop them. He found out where I live. He wants to be part of our daughter's life again, but her voice cracked. "He doesn't know how to do anything without hurting people." The silence that followed was so complete that Nia could hear her own pulse. June stood perfectly still, processing information with the same cold efficiency he probably used to run his empire. Then he pulled out his phone, typed something quickly, and set it face down on the counter. "You're staying for dinner," he said, not asking, stating. "But I have to pick up my daughter from— I'll send a car. Your daughter will be brought here safely with anything she needs for the evening. You'll eat. We'll talk. And then we'll fix this." Nia stared at him. "You can't just— "I can," June interrupted quietly. "And I will. The only question is whether you're going to fight me on something that benefits you, or whether you're going to let someone help you for once in your life." The car that picked up Lena was a black sedan with leather seats and a driver who introduced himself as Mr. Kim and treated her 7-year-old daughter like royalty. By the time they arrived at the penthouse, Lena was chattering excitedly about the fancy car and asking if they were going to meet a prince. When she saw June, she went quiet for exactly 3 seconds. Then she tilted her head and said, "Are you Mommy's boss?" June lowered himself to her eye level with a grace that seemed impossible for a man his size. "I am. And you must be Lena. Your mother has told me you're very smart." Lena's face lit up. "I got an A on my spelling test." "That's impressive. What was the hardest word?" "Necessary. It has so many letters." Watching them, Nia felt something crack in her chest. This man who supposedly ran half the criminal operations in Blue Harbor District was crouching in his $1,000 suit, discussing spelling words with her daughter like it was the most important conversation he'd had all day. When Lena asked what they were having for dinner, June stood and extended his hand to her. "Have you ever had Korean barbecue?" Lena took his hand without hesitation, and Nia watched in stunned silence as the most dangerous man she knew led her daughter toward the dining room, explaining the difference between bulgogi and galbi like he was talking to an adult who deserved real answers. The dinner should have been awkward. It should have been terrifying. Instead, it was the strangest evening of Naya's entire life. June had ordered enough food to feed 10 people from Seoul Mare Restaurant, his upscale fusion place that had a 6-month waiting list. He taught Lena how to use chopsticks, patient through every dropped piece of meat, never once showing frustration. He asked about her favorite subjects in school, her friends, what she wanted to be when she grew up. And he listened, actually listened, like her answers mattered, like she mattered. When Lena asked him where he was from, June's expression softened in a way Nia had never seen. "Korea originally, a small city you've probably never heard of. I came here when I was 16, lived with my grandmother in a tiny apartment not far from where you live now." "Do you miss it?" Lena asked. "Sometimes. Mostly I miss my grandmother. She used to make me kimchi jjigae when I was sad." "Do you know what that is?" Lena shook her head. "It's a stew. Spicy, warm, makes everything feel better." She'd say that food cooked with love could heal anything. His eyes drifted to Nia for just a moment. I think she was right. Later, after Lena had fallen asleep on the penthouse couch, wrapped in a blanket June had produced from somewhere, he and Nia stood by the windows, looking out at the city. The silence between them felt different now. Less like the distance between employer and employee, more like two people trying to figure out what they were becoming. "Thank you," Naya said quietly. "For tonight. For her. You didn't have to." "I wanted to," June interrupted. "She's remarkable. You've raised her well." "I've tried. It hasn't been easy. I can see that. I can also see that you've been carrying this alone for too long." He turned to face her fully. "Tell me about him. Everything." So she did. The words poured out like water from a broken dam. How she'd met Derek when she was barely out of high school. How charming he'd been at first. How slowly the control had tightened until she couldn't breathe. The first time he'd hit her. The 100th time. Getting pregnant with Lena and thinking maybe a baby would change him. Realizing it only made him worse. The night she'd finally run, 8 months pregnant and terrified, with nothing but the clothes on her back, the 3 years of hiding, working herself to exhaustion, building a life from scraps. And now Derek, showing up like a ghost she couldn't exorcise, threatening to take the only good thing she'd ever created. When she finished, her cheeks were wet, and June was looking at her with an expression she couldn't name. "He won't touch you again," June said simply. "I can't ask you to. You didn't ask. I'm telling you. He won't touch you. He won't touch Lena. He won't even think about either of you, without remembering what happens to men who hurt what's mine." The possessiveness in that statement should have scared her. Instead, it made her feel something she hadn't felt in years. Safe. The phone call came 2 days later while Naya was at her second job, scrubbing floors at an office building downtown. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer. "Ms. Brooks, this is Officer Martinez with the Blue Harbor Police Department. We need you to come down to the station. There's been a complaint filed against you." Naya's blood went cold. "A complaint? What kind of complaint?" "Harassment and custodial interference. A Mr. Derek Cole claims you've been preventing him from seeing his daughter and making threatening statements. We need to get your statement." The world tilted. This was Derek's move. file a false report, make her look unstable, build a case for custody. She'd seen him do it to other women. She just never thought she'd be next again. Her hands were shaking so badly she could barely hold the phone when she called June. He answered on the first ring. "What's wrong?" Not a question, a demand. She explained through tears and panic. Derek's complaint, the police, the custody threat, how she didn't have money for a lawyer, how she couldn't lose Lena, how this was exactly what Derek wanted, to make her helpless and desperate and willing to do anything. June was quiet for exactly 5 seconds. Then he said, "Don't go to the station yet. Give me 1 hour." "June, I can't just ignore." 1 hour, Nia. Trust me." The line went dead. 63 minutes later, Nia's phone rang again. Same officer, different tone. "Ms. Brooks, there's been a development in your case. The complaint has been withdrawn. Mr. Cole came in and admitted he was mistaken about several facts. You're no longer needed at the station." Nia stood in the middle of the office building hallway, mop in hand, trying to understand what she'd just heard. He withdrew it? Just like that? "Yes, ma'am. Apparently, he realized he'd been misinformed about the situation. We apologize for any inconvenience." The officer's voice was stiff, formal, like he was reading from a script, or like someone had put the fear of God into him. After hanging up, Nia's phone immediately buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "It's handled. He won't bother you again. We should talk. Come to the penthouse when you're done with work." Please, this is the moment everything changes for Nia. If you're feeling this tension, show some love by hitting that like button and dropping a comment about whether you think she should trust June or run. Don't forget to subscribe, because this story is about to get even more intense. When Nia arrived at the penthouse that evening, June was standing on the balcony, shirt sleeves rolled up, tie loosened, looking more human than she'd ever seen him. She didn't knock. She just walked straight out to where he stood and said, "What did you do?" He didn't turn around. I reminded him of reality. That's not an answer. It's the only answer you need. Nia grabbed his arm, forcing him to face her. No, it's not. What did you do to Derek? June's eyes met hers, and for the first time, she saw the full weight of what he was. Not a businessman, not an employer. A man who controlled life and death with a phone call. I explained that his daughter was under my protection. I explained what happens to people who threaten what's under my protection. I had lawyers file restraining orders, police reports, and custody documentation showing his history of violence. I made it very clear that if he ever comes near you or Lena again, he won't be found. His voice never rose. He stated facts like he was discussing the weather. Within 20 minutes, he understood. Nia's breath came in short gasps. You can't play God with people's lives. I'm not playing anything. I'm protecting what matters. By threatening him? By using your power to— Yes, June interrupted flatly. By doing exactly that. You think the law was going to protect you? You think the system was going to choose you over him? You've been running for 3 years, Nia. 3 years of looking over your shoulder, of working yourself to death, of being afraid every single day. I ended that in 1 hour. I didn't ask you to. You shouldn't have to ask for basic safety. His voice finally rose, echoing across the balcony. You shouldn't have to beg for the right to live without fear. You shouldn't have to earn protection. The silence that crashed between them was deafening. Nia felt tears burning her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. I don't want to be saved by fear, she whispered. I don't want Lena growing up thinking that's how the world works, that power and violence are the only things that matter. June's jaw tightened. That is how the world works. Maybe not the world you want to live in, but the world you do live in. The world doesn't forgive weakness, Nia. It devours it. I learned that when I was 16 and watched my grandmother die because we couldn't afford the medical care she needed. Because we were nobodies. Because we were weak. His hands clenched into fists. I swore I'd never be weak again. Never let anyone I cared about be vulnerable again. So yes, I used my power. I always will, because that's the only language predators understand. Nia stepped back, her heart breaking for reasons she couldn't fully name. Then maybe that makes you one of them. She saw the words land like a physical blow. Saw something flicker across June's face that might have been pain, but she couldn't stay. Couldn't stand in this beautiful prison and pretend that safety bought with fear was the same as freedom. She gathered her bag, her coat, and walked toward the elevator. Behind her, June didn't move, didn't call her back, just stood on that balcony like a statue carved from regret and watched her leave. The next 3 weeks were the longest of Nia's life. June didn't call, didn't text, didn't appear at the penthouse during her cleaning. Hours. He'd vanished from her life as completely as if he'd never been there at all, except his absence was everywhere, in the silence of the penthouse that used to feel alive with his presence, in Lena's questions about Mr. June and whether they'd see him again, in Nia's own traitorous heart that kept waiting for a knock on her door that never came. She told herself this was better, safer, normal. She'd gone back to being invisible, which was exactly what she'd wanted. Except now, invisible felt like suffocating. Her financial situation got worse. The office building downtown cut her hours. The Riverside apartments found someone cheaper. She was down to 3 jobs, barely making rent, rationing groceries. Lena noticed. Kids always noticed. "Mommy, are we poor again?" she asked one night over a dinner of rice and canned vegetables. Nia forced a smile. "We're just being careful with money, baby. It's temporary." But she didn't know if that was true. And late at night, when Lena was asleep and the apartment was dark and quiet, Nia let herself admit the truth she'd been avoiding. She missed him. Missed June Park with an intensity that terrified her. Missed his calm presence. Missed the way he looked at her, like she was visible. Missed feeling, for just a moment, like someone gave a damn whether she lived or died. The knock came at 1:47 in the morning on a Thursday. Nia was awake because she was always awake lately, staring at the ceiling and doing math that never added up. The knock was soft, careful, not threatening, but it sent her heart racing anyway, because nobody knocked at 1:47 in the morning with good news. She checked the peephole and almost didn't believe what she saw. June Park, standing in her hallway without guards or suits or the armor of his power. Just a man in jeans and a simple black shirt, looking more exhausted than she'd ever seen him. She opened the door. They stared at each other. "I'm sorry," June said quietly. "I'm sorry for overstepping, for using my power without asking you first, for making decisions about your life like I had the right." Nia's throat closed. "June, let me finish. Please." He took a breath. "I'm not good at this, at caring about people, at letting anyone close enough to matter. I built walls so high that nothing could touch me. And then you walked into my life, and somehow got through every single one of them. You and Lena. You made me want to be better. Made me want to be someone who deserved to be in your presence." His voice cracked slightly. "But I don't know how to protect people without being what I am, without using the power I've built, and I'm terrified that who I am will destroy what you are." Nia's vision blurred with tears. "I'm scared too," she whispered. "I'm scared of loving someone whose world could swallow mine whole. I'm scared of Lena getting attached to you and then losing you. I'm scared that one day you'll realize I'm just the cleaning lady, and this was all some temporary fascination. Look at me, June said firmly. She did. He stepped closer, close enough that she could see the exhaustion in his eyes, the vulnerability he was showing her. You are not just anything. You're the first person in 10 years who made me remember what it feels like to be human, who made me want a life outside of power and control and endless fighting. Lena is the first child who looked at me and didn't see a monster. You're not temporary, Nia. You're the first permanent thing I've wanted since my grandmother died. We're at the most emotional moment in this entire story. If you're feeling this in your chest right now, hit that subscribe button and let me know in the comments if you believe in second chances. And smash that like button if you want to see where this goes. Nia reached up and cupped his face in her hands, feeling the rough stubble, the warmth of his skin, the reality of him. I don't want to be saved, she said softly. I want to be seen. I want to be chosen. I want someone who stands beside me, not in front of me. I can do that, June whispered. I can try. It might not be perfect. I might mess up, but I will spend every day trying to be the man you deserve. I don't need perfect. I just need honest. He leaned his forehead against hers, and they stood like that in her doorway, two broken people trying to figure out if their pieces fit together. Can I see you tomorrow? He asked. Really see you. Not as your employer, not as someone trying to fix your life. Just as someone who wants to know everything about you. Yes, Nia breathed, but there are rules. Name them. You don't make decisions about my life without asking me first. You don't use your power to control situations that involve me unless I explicitly ask for your help. And you have to let me be independent, even when it scares you. June nodded slowly. Agreed. And my rules? You have rules. Just one. You stop trying to be invisible. You let yourself be seen, be cared for, be important. Because you are, Nia. You're important. To me. She kissed him then. Soft and tentative, and full of all the fear and hope and possibility that existed between them. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, June smiled. Actually smiled. And Nia realized she'd never seen that before. I should go, he said reluctantly. Let you sleep. But tomorrow, dinner? Real dinner. You, me, and Lena? That sounds perfect. The next 6 months were a study in negotiation and compromise. June learning to ask instead of command. Nia learning to accept help without feeling like she was surrendering. They had fights, spectacular ones, about his work, about her stubbornness, about how to navigate a relationship between two people from completely different worlds. But they also had quiet moments. June teaching Lena Korean words, Nia cooking in his massive kitchen, while he watched like it was the most fascinating thing he'd ever seen. Family dinners at Solmare, restaurant where Lena would perform impromptu speeches about her day, and June would listen with the intensity he usually reserved for business negotiations. Slowly, things changed. June began pulling back from the darker aspects of his business, delegating the dangerous work, focusing on the legitimate enterprises. Nia started her own small cleaning company, hiring other women in situations like hers, offering fair wages and respect and safety. Lena thrived, her confidence growing every day she spent with June, who treated her like she was the most important person in the world. And Nia found herself transforming from the invisible woman who cleaned penthouses to someone who walked through the world with her head up, her shoulders back, and the knowledge that she was finally, completely, undeniably seen. The proposal happened on an ordinary Tuesday. No grand gestures, no public displays. Just June and Nia in the penthouse kitchen after Lena had gone to bed, drinking tea and talking about nothing and everything. I want to marry you, June said suddenly, setting down his cup. Naya froze. What? I want to marry you. Officially. Permanently. I want Lena to have my name if she wants it. I want to build a life where the three of us are a family. Not eventually. Not someday. Now. He pulled out a small box from his pocket, opening it to reveal a simple silver band with a single diamond. This was my grandmother's. She gave it to me before she died, and told me to give it to someone who made me remember how to love. That's you, Naya. You're the one who taught me that power isn't the most important thing in the world. That being seen is worth more than being feared. So will you marry me? Naya stared at the ring, at this man who had somehow gone from terrifying employer to the person she couldn't imagine living without. Yes, she whispered, then louder. Yes, yes, I'll marry you. June slipped the ring onto her finger, with shaking hands, and they held each other in that kitchen while the city lights glittered through the windows. Two people who had survived their own private wars, finding peace in each other. The wedding was small, intimate, just close friends and the family they'd built from scraps and second chances. Lena was the flower girl, taking her role with adorable seriousness. Mrs. Chen from next door cried through the entire ceremony. And when June kissed his bride, the invisible woman who had somehow become the center of his entire world, everyone who knew their story understood they were witnessing something rare. Love that survived fear. Trust that outlasted trauma. Hope that refused to die. 5 years later, Naya sat in the office of Brooks Cleaning Services, reviewing contracts and schedules, managing a team of 30 women who she'd personally trained and mentored. The company was thriving, known throughout Blue Harbor District for its reliability and integrity. Through the window, she could see June waiting in the car outside. He'd insisted on driving her to work, even though she'd told him 100 times she could take the bus. But he liked the extra 15 minutes together in the morning. Liked asking about her day before it started. Liked the ordinary intimacy of it. Lena, now 12, was excelling in school. She'd decided she wanted to be a lawyer, to help people like her mom had needed help. June had been so proud he'd almost cried. Their life wasn't perfect. June still had nightmares about his past. Nia still had moments where Derek's ghost made her flinch, but they'd built something real, something solid. Something that proved love could exist even in the darkest corners if two people were brave enough to reach for it. As Naya packed her bag and headed toward the door, her phone buzzed with a text from June. Dinner at Solmar tonight. Lena wants to bring her report card. She smiled, typing back a quick yes. Then she stepped out into the sunlight, no longer invisible, no longer afraid. Just a woman who'd learned that sometimes the most dangerous thing you can do is let yourself be seen. And sometimes, that's exactly how you find your way home. If this story moved you, do me a favor and subscribe to this channel right now. Hit that like button, drop a comment telling me what you thought, and share this with someone who needs to hear a story about second chances. Because everyone deserves to be seen. Everyone deserves to be chosen. And everyone deserves a love that sees their scars and says, "You're still beautiful." Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next story.